Good morning, and welcome to the latest episode of Talking Baldocks. I am Neil Baldock, and this is.
Matt Baldock.
And what is this podcast, Matthew?
Talking Baldocks.
Exactly. So, yeah, let's get into it. We're actually episode 16, so we've got a good bank of podcasts behind us. And this one is particularly timely because we've just had the end of the stamp duty deadline where stamp duty thresholds are all increasing as of the 1st of April. We're recording this on the 3rd of April. So, of course, as well as the end of quarter one, we've also got that deadline that's just passed. So I just wanted to talk today a little bit about, well, hopefully something interesting for both sales and letting agents, but we'll start with the sales piece because there's other stuff coming for letting agents this quarter as well. Um, and, just talk about, obviously, the first quarter of this year was incredibly busy and, most agents, including ourselves and most agents we talk to, have banked a substantial amount of money, probably more than they have done in the previous quarter or previous quarters, and I imagine a lot more than they are going to in the next quarter. So I think there's a lot of agents sitting out there at the minute, sitting on good levels of cash, and probably feeling pretty good because we've had a good quarter. But I think. From my point of view, sort of looking at it as a business owner type scenario, I think it's important to discuss not getting carried away with that and what agents need to do to continue their business levels into the next quarter, and also maybe plan a little bit for the future in terms of right, we are maybe sitting on all this cash right now, but ultimately it's maybe just paying back what they didn't have before, and also creating a bit of a buffer for what they may not have in the coming quarter. So, yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
You're just pissing on everyone's parade, aren't you? Everyone wants to celebrate having the big quarter and then the big bad business owners come in. This is basically the podcast equivalent of you're only as good as your last sales month.
Well,
But
yeah, and the thing is, that's people hate these phrases, but and you know what I'm like, mate, and I don't mind it. I don't mind being the big bad wolf. I'm very optimistic. I'm very, I like launching things, but sometimes you've got to bring a bit of reality into people as well.
no. As I say, I'm only messing about with you because it is true at the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, most agents out there feeling pretty good, I would think, as you're saying. But I wonder how many, and I don't want this to be another marketing conversation because we've done a few of them, but I'm just wondering how many of them were so concentrated on getting their exchanges through, did they take their eye off the ball of future business? And
Mm.
as we said, I think even in the last chat that we had, um, business has to be a short game and a long game all at the same time. So the short game, certainly the first 3 months, and probably again only in March, because I think a lot of agents kind of forgot about the stamp duty holiday even in January, and it was only when it started being ramped up on social media people thought of it. But certainly in March, the short game was let's bank as much money as possible. But were you also looking at the future and what you're going to have there? And as you say, and listen, I love spending money in terms of the marketing. So when you look at the bank and you've got all this money sat there, you think, oh, brilliant, I can do that Google ads I have been putting off, that big batch of leaflets I've been waiting to get out and do that. And I'm not saying don't do any marketing, as we've always said, marketing should be done consistently, but just be careful not to literally it's like when you have a good commission month and when you were employed, right? You have a really big month, so you go out, you go down the shops, you go out, you go for all these fancy meals, you buy some new clothes, and the next month the poor commission comes in and you're asking your mum to borrow some money. And that's kind of the position we don't want people to get in with this. So we're not, you've worked hard, you've got your money, well done, but boring as it is, although actually, um, believe me, when there's nothing more boring than sitting in because you've got no money. We did that on our early business days. Um, you might not want to hear it, but really, you've got to save that money. You've got to box clever with it. Don't get really excited because don't forget 20% of that money isn't yours. That's the VAT man's.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
That's a really great point because again, we're in this of the first quarter of the year. It's the first VAT quarter of the year, so that money's going to be due May the 7th for everybody to pay their VAT bill. So yeah, people have got to look at that as well.
And just also, you kind of have to look at how you, I suppose, traded over the maybe the last quarter or even what you banked in January, February. Are you filling holes with that? And have a really stark look at your pipeline because your pipeline will have been depleted. Now, don't get me wrong, it's been depleted in a good way because it's not fall throughs, it's bankings. But I think, and you're the king of cash flow. Cash flow out, certainly that next quarter. I mean, you really want to be cash flowing a year, right? But you want to have a really accurate cash flow for your next 3 months and go, right, this is great. We banked, half our pipeline or whatever. And then get a really up to date if whoever your sales progressor is, if you're doing it yourself, if you're using a firm, whatever that is, right, what am I, honestly, we don't want to, pie in the sky numbers. What would you bet your house I'm going to bank in April, May, June, and then you can you can cut your cloth accordingly.
Cut your cloth accordingly. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's a really good point on the cash flow side of things because what we tend to find people do is you do your cash flow report religiously when you're having a bad time because
Mm.
you need to know where your money is. And then all of a sudden, when maybe your business comes out of its overdraft or you've got a massive cash reserve which you haven't had before, or whatever the case may be, whatever positive cash position you get your business into. Um, all of a sudden, and it's like with everything, isn't it? It's this consistency that we're always talking about, which is where it gets boring, and so that's why people put it down. But when things are going really well and we're getting loads of leads, sometimes people will go, "Oh, we're getting loads of leads. We might not do any. We don't need to do the marketing. We can cut that." Or if things get tough, they then cut it because they're trying to cut the cash flow. It's the same with a cash flow report. People tend to only do it when they're struggling, rather than actually now we've done really well, but let's plan for the next 6 months to a year and see, because that will help you make your spending decisions. So yeah, I think that's just a point I wanted to make was that it's been a great time, and quite frankly, it's been a nice quarter, and we feel good. And we should celebrate that win, but also we should head into the next battle as such with prepared and with a bit of a plan. And so yes, I guess in terms of what agents can do to keep their momentum as much as possible, um, really, I think it's not sitting back and thinking, "Great, I've had a great time." It is keep pushing on again, isn't it? Which is sometimes hard, because there's no break as such. But
No, no, yeah,
just
most
keep
definitely.
going.
And I mean, leveraging your successes. So, you've got a lot of wins. So we tend to find agents shout about things when they've maybe sold them, and they'll and or what I find is when an agent sells something, if they're still doing print and direct mail, they'll put that out when they've agreed a sale. When it comes to an exchange or completion, they'll just do the typical social media, happy to have exchanged things. And you want to be
Mm.
doing both on both really. So you've kind of got four touch points you can leverage your properties on it. You've got, the point, and this especially works when you've got lower volume agents. When you're not doing huge volumes because you're a personal agent or just a smaller independent, you can't sometimes think, well, I don't have, all these instructions to keep sharing about. Well, that's okay because one instruction can get you new to the market, sale agreed, exchanged, and completed. And you see
Mm.
you've got four touch points there. And I think via direct mail, leaflets, and also social media most agents are going to have a glut of properties they can shout about now. So and that's great. So do your end of March updates. What happened, what we agreed sales on, but what also completed. I think use the stories of the people. So we've got a couple of really nice stories of our completions where we've had people that were on the market with other agents. I had a mum, dad, and a 1 year old almost trapped in a one bed flat. They couldn't get moved for 6 months. We took it, sold it. They completed just before the stamp duty deadline. Um, we've got a couple of those kind of stories, and that's what people want to know about. Those don't be what you don't want to do as an agent is be like, we've had a fantastic quarter, we've smashed it, da da da, because the public already think you earn a fortune. The public think all agents are driving around in BMWs, laid on beds of money. So if you start willy waving a bit too much, that kind of defeats the object. So tell the stories of the people you've helped, but make sure you take full advantage of the good quarter or the good March that you've had, not in terms of just the monetary aspect, but in terms of the marketing opportunities out of it.
Yeah, very good points. Um, and
And
what do
and
you
go
go on,
on.
sorry, man?
No, sorry. And the other thing I was going to say, because everything I think is, one positive. It's a balance, right? If there's a positive spin, there's a negative spin. Just my comment then about the public thinking, we're having off. Make sure your team understand what's happening as
Mm.
well, because depends on how transparent you are. So we're really transparent. With our figures, things like that. Not everybody likes to, but what you don't want is, your members of staff there, also your team members having, absolutely busted themselves trying to get these exchanges through and then thinking, oh God, the owner's earned a fortune this month. He's absolutely having it off. What they don't realise is when they didn't earn, and you're smiling because you understand this, when you didn't bank any money in December or you didn't bank any money in January, you're not now. Me and you aren't suddenly flying out to the Caribbean. You've got to actually fill those holes, or as we're now forward planned. So realistically, I would think a lot of agents are going to have a poor banking month. In April because they've probably done their load in March. So actually, you could say to them, listen, and it is that it's that you want to promote the good stuff. You want to keep everyone motivated, but it has to be realistic, right? Optimism is realistic positivity. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah,
So it's a case of listen, fantastic, thank you for your help. You've done it so well. Just so you know, we're about to hit this hole, so we have to keep pushing forward. And even for your team members, we're talking about business owners. Don't spend all your money on. Most of your team are going to have a really big commission month next month. Actually, just
mm.
say to them, listen, guys, enjoy yourselves. Go out, celebrate with the missus, with the other half, whatever. But do bear in mind, next month's going to be a bit tight.
Yeah. This is, it's a constant challenge as business owners, isn't it, to create that balance between keeping your fee earners motivated and giving them a dose of reality when, maybe they haven't hit their targets for 3 months, then they hit it 1 month, and all of a sudden they're like, just look at what I've done. This is fantastic. Look how much money I've made you, rah, rah, rah. And you've got, yeah, but sometimes you have to give them that reality and just say, look, that is fantastic. Thank you very much. Well done. However, I just have to let you know that obviously what we're doing is really catching up, and then what we need to think about for the next few months is these things, without taking away, because we do want to celebrate. Ultimately, if you lose a couple of months, you lose a couple of months, and when you win one, you've got to celebrate it because
Yeah,
otherwise you're never gonna feel good. But we do also, it's like if you're a sports team and you win one game and you've got to. The coach has got to give the reality sometimes of look, we need to win a few more of these if we want to bump ourselves up the league.
exactly. If you lose 5 games on the trot and then you win one 7-0, the fact you've scored 7 goals in a game doesn't all of a sudden bring you all those points back from there, right? So, but again, that's then right. Okay, what did we do well? What worked here? And again, that's the other thing. Look at your. We had a couple of transactions go through really quickly. And so, yes, obviously there was a pressure from a deadline, but also it was possible for them to get through. So I'm going to deep dive into them. I want to know what solicitors worked on them. I want to speak to them, speak to the sales progression team. What did we communicate differently? Because the successes won't purely be down. That was a driver. They won't purely be down to the pressure of the deadline, but they show that things can be done a little bit differently. Now, you don't want them under that immense pressure because it was horrible for conveyances. It wasn't great for agents. There has to be a middle ground where you're like, well, look, we can do things a bit quicker. What can we learn from that?
Yeah, absolutely agreed, and that's maybe a whole subject for another day. You've opened the dangerous can of worms there, which I saw another agent had done on LinkedIn and got completely lambasted by some big name conveyancers actually. Which and I could see it from both sides, but actually the agent, I don't think, and again, it's how you take the context of the written word, isn't it? But I don't think he meant it in a negative way. I think
I
conveyancers have done fantastically well. But as you say, it does show that maybe there is a different way of doing things. But it is, maybe it means conveyancers need to charge a bit more money in order to have more people, so they're not under that stress. I don't know. That's a whole nother subject because we don't want people working under that immense pressure all the time, for sure.
No, 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 no. No, I know the post you mean. I think the guy, I think he went about it in the wrong way. What his point was, funnily enough, I'd made a comment thanking conveyancers. I'd made a post, no, that which did well, and he was the only negative comment on that. From I had agents and conveyancers saying, yeah, well done, working together, and he was one. Oh, conveyancers could be a bit quicker. So yeah, there's always different things, but there's definitely lessons to be learned. And what we tend to do, we were having this chat about something else the other day, we tend to always try and look at what's going wrong. So, as a business owner, you focus on so what isn't working, how can I improve it? But sometimes you need to look at what's gone really well and how can I double down on that and how can we actually take that to the next level. So, for instance, I've had a LinkedIn post go out today because we're celebrating our property partners Joe and Lionel's year anniversary with us. Um, they with coincidentally we managed to celebrate them by them having a completion. It was a leasehold property agreed on the 25th of February, completed on the 31st of March.
Amazing.
Unheard of. So I really want to chat with them. Who did you work with on it? What was the buyer profile? What was the seller profile? Because they're the kind of things one. And again, there will always be unique cases, but I think it is important to really analyze your successes as much as analyzing your failures.
Agreed. Yeah,
That was a great
absolutely.
soundbite. Clip that bit and put that on when you do the promotion there. I like that one.
Yeah, very nice. So yeah, the other thing I want to chat about is lettings coming up. We've got a few things coming up this quarter, some of which I think agents still aren't aware of. So we've obviously got all the noise around the Renters' Rights Bill, which is still progressing through. It's held up at the minute in the House of Lords at that stage, but it's still progressing through. So we need to start really, if you haven't already, we need to start thinking more seriously about that and putting some plans into place. The caveat to that is you can't exactly put plans into place until you know exactly what you're dealing with. So, but we kind of know what's coming, so we should be planning for that. But that's actually taken away something that's coming sneaking in the back door, which is sanction checks that need to be done. As of the 14th of May, all letting agents are going to have to now do a sanctions check on both landlords and tenants. There's no um, monetary value to it anymore. It doesn't matter how much the rent is per month. Just every single landlord and tenant is going to need a sanctions check as of the 14th of May. So,
And if you don't know what a sanction check is, can you?
so a sanctions check is essentially there is a list of a government list of people that have either been prosecuted for money laundering or are suspected of that kind of activity, and you need to check that your landlord client and your tenant are not on that sanctions list. So you need to do that at the point of instruction for your landlord, and before a contract is signed with the tenant, you'll need to make sure there's a sanction check in place for them. And you're going to need to keep a record of that because, of course, you know, the authorities will probably no doubt start checking on people and trying to find a scapegoat. So, I think from the lettings point of view, the administrative burden is becoming more and more.
Yeah.
Um, People need to make sure they've got the right technology in place in order to make these things simpler for their business. But they also maybe we need to start looking at our fee structures and are we still taking on all this work for free, or are we actually going to say, listen, we're doing more work, we need to charge a bit more for that. Much like a solicitor has their disbursements, they don't pick up the land registry fee for you, and they don't pick up the searches and all this kind of stuff. Um, as an agent, I think people should be reviewing their fees constantly, making sure it's either built into their fee at an appropriate level or there's an extra charge for it, whatever the case may be. And don't, I know I'm on a bit of a rant here, but I mean, the ultimate consequence of all of this is it probably isn't actually going to cost your landlord anymore because ultimately it's probably going to keep driving the rents up. Um, so yeah, I think just it's a preparation time for letting agents, but also a very good opportunity to be looking at their fee structure and how they can make their business more profitable.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually think I think if you look at the two disciplines, sales and lettings agents, proper good lettings agents are they do more legal work, if you like. They're more akin to a solicitor. So I actually think it's easier to put your fees up as a letting agent than it is as a sales agent because there's more tangible things you can say to the landlord we're having to do, you see. So we're going to have to do this, we now have to do this. We have to do a lot of the government's work at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we collect their VAT for them. We have to now do, you do your right to rent check, you've got to do the sanctions checks, you do lots of things on their behalf. And as you say, there's costs to it. And the thing is, without this being a whole fee thing, your landlord is a person who lives a life. So anything they are doing in their other lives, the costs have gone up. If they go to the shops, food's more expensive. If they go to try and have some building works done, materials more expensive, labour's more expensive. So they're not silly. It's not that, oh, weirdly, letting agencies are the only things that don't have extra costs anymore. So, I think you can do there. But yeah, I like your preparation thing. Almost have a little bit of a plan A and a plan B. So,
Exactly.
if you're looking at what's likely to come in, what's not likely to come in. Well, if this does come in, how does that look? It never hurts just to have a little backup plan.
No,
Um,
agreed, agreed. And I think the other thing, from a letting agency point of view, is a real focus on business development, because we have seen, obviously, because of all of these legislative changes coming, we are seeing more landlords exiting the market. That is definitely happening. Um, we've seen that in our own business. We've seen it en masse in other areas of the country. We haven't really seen it en masse, but it's definitely a thing. We're selling more and more of our letting stock. So there's two things you can do. If you've got a sales and lettings business, you really need to get those two working really closely together, in terms of trying to trade the properties and sell them to another landlord and keep them in your managed book. But equally, if you can't do that, then at least get the sale out of it. So get your sales and lettings teams working really in tandem. But also, there are still landlords investing. There are still landlords out there. And have you got a lead generation strategy? So we have, and we get a lot of landlord leads, but we weren't necessarily having the time to follow them up consistently. So we've actually invested in a business development manager, and we're having a real push on bringing new clients into the business, bringing new landlords in. And of course, as many people know, we've got the HMO network as well, and we're sort of experts in the HMO world. And that's a big investment strategy at the minute. You're finding a lot of landlords are coming out of the traditional buy-to-let model, and more and more of the investment is actually going into the HMO world. So you got to look at how you adapt your business model with the times, as well. So I don't think it's not a time to sit still as a letting agent, is what I'm saying.
No, no, most definitely. And actually, so I was just looking because there was something in property industry about that this morning because it's very easy to go as a letting agent. Oh God, it's terrible. No, it's buy to let costs are up in terms of stamp duty. Landlords are selling, but again, it's kind of a bit of like facts and not opinions as such. So if you just go on your everyone's selling, people are selling, other agents selling. But then I looked, say, so property industry today. And apparently in quarter four of 24, buy to let loans were up 39.2% compared with the same quarter in the previous year. So that's a hell of a lot of lending on buy to let. So there are people, and we've always said, stocks go up and down and can and never come back up again. Houses are safe, and in this country, we are obsessed with buying property still. So I think so. On the one hand, you go, "Oh God, my landlord's selling," but on the other hand, there are people out there buying, and as you
Yeah.
very
Well,
rightly say, this is
also, case in point, me and you were walking down the high street yesterday and bumped into one of our landlord clients, right?
yeah.
Haven't seen him for a while. Now it turns out he's buying a particularly good deal of a short lease property, got a very good deal on the price of it. But the point is, he is a landlord and he is still investing.
And also, he asked me to go. He said, "I want more of them."
Yes, exactly. And so he's asked us. So it's there are people out there who still want to invest. It's just you got to look for them. You got to talk to your clients, find out what they're doing, what their motivation is, find out who in your client bank is still buying. Um,
And I think you now need more than ever a real synergy between your sales and your lettings teams because a lot of the time they may be running this kind of separately. It may be a bit of inter-office competition, which is great, but they really need to be feeding each other now. So if you list a property And it's probably, it's one that could work on the rental market. That should definitely be getting a price off of your lettings team. That's probably being published on your details. You should have something about it being a good buy to let, opportunity. Um, if your sales team are registering buy to let applicants, they should be asking them if they own any other properties, or they should be passing the buy to let applicants over to the lettings team so they can farm them as well. And obviously, the other way around, the lettings team, if obviously someone is making noise about selling, that needs to go to your sales team. But also, your lettings team should be asking, your property managers should be asking your landlords, A, do you own any other properties that we don't know about? Because I guarantee you've got landlords that own properties you don't deal with.
100%.
B, do you know any other landlords? Because landlords have landlord friends. And C, are you in the market to buy any more, or is anybody you know in the market to buy any more? And those kind of three, four questions, they will definitely, definitely bring you results if you ask them consistently.
Yeah, 100%. And it's that age-old thing of like we're all spending money on marketing to get new clients. When and we do need to keep doing that, of course. We need to bring new things into the market, new people into the market. But you know, if you've got if you're running an agency of any size and you've got a few hundred landlords or even 100 plus really, how often are you speaking to them and developing your relationship with them? Because you might actually not need any new clients. You just might need some more business from the clients you've already got. By getting them to buy something else or getting the management of another property, like you say, that they've got. Because yeah, 100%. I mean, we've had this for years where clients we've dealt with for years suddenly phone up and say, "Oh, hey, I've got this one. I've had a tenant in it for 10 years, and so they were good as gold, and I've been managing it myself, but." Um, they're leaving now and I don't want to manage it anymore. So can you take that one on? And yeah, thankfully clients do ring up sometimes and do that, but you could exaggerate those things happening if we already knew that they owned those properties.
Yeah, most definitely.
So so yeah, I think there's a lot to do. I think basically the message is no sitting on your laurels and let's crack on and have another big quarter.
Yeah, no, plenty to do. As I say, definitely celebrate your wins, but be sensible with your spends. And yeah, there's this is the life of sales, right? There's no days off.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I mean, that's the thing when you run essentially a pipeline business, which is what an estate and a letting agency is. You have to keep filling up that funnel and filling up the pipeline. And if you stop doing that, then you can have a problem in a few months' time.
Exactly.
So
Good
yeah, hope
stuff.
that's helpful. Um, right.
So
What's left to say, Matt?
So we do that. Listen, if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe. As we're saying, ask your landlords if they know any other landlords. If you know any other agents that you think might benefit from this, share this with them. We're doing this to try and help everybody. A very quick plug, which we never do, but actually we've got our next estate agency dinner for estate agency and letting agents coming up on the 17th of April. Basically, everything we've discussed about here it's that just in a bigger room. It's full of people wanting to chat things. So if you want to listen, if you like what we've said, but you actually want to ask questions, A will be there, but B there'll be loads of other agents to be there. So just a quick plug for the dinner. So yeah, like, subscribe, come to the dinner. We'll put the links out on LinkedIn, and then all that's left to say is I've been Matt Baldock. He's been,
Neil Baldock.
and that was Talking Baldocks.
See you next time.